Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure: all Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure, trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @Pless. And let me do a quick sound check. Stephen, KP, can you hear me? Can you see my screen? Yeah, if you would, let me know. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. That certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500, the NASDAQ 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES Futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and hedge their delta exposure with the ES Futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index. QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index. And the NQ Futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading, and the first is planning, and I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as the directional bias. And the second step of my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. And hello, Stephen, KP, welcome, glad you're here. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, May 28th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings for this week. And then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. And then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with economic data, events, and earnings, and news items. So first of all, the FOMC minutes are released at 2 p.m. today, will be released at 2 p.m. today. I'll stop wherever I am. We'll take a look at the S&P 500, see if there's any impact from the FOMC minutes. And then also note, NVDA reports earnings after the market closes today. And NVIDIA is expected to move plus or minus 6%. And for those of you who are Spotgamma subscribers, The AM Founders Note included more information about NVIDIA today. We'll take a look at how traders are positioning themselves in NVIDIA before the earnings report this afternoon. All right, so that's today, FOMC minutes, NVIDIA reports earnings. Then tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, GDP data is released. Then on Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, again, PCE data is released. And that will wrap up the week. All right, let's move on to positional analysis. Let's start with the SP 500. Let's go to the ES Futures and Bookmap. And this is again, the ES Futures and Bookmap. Sharp drop this morning, a very brief opening drive, then a sharp drop down to right around 5,900. That's SPX 5,900. And we'll take a look at Trace in just a minute to see there was some positive gamma support below, as well as the some buyers down here right around ES 59.14. So we'll take a closer look at that. All right, so let's step back. Let's take a look at a higher time frame. Let's take a look at the underlying index charts. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. So this is, again, SPX, the underlying index. This is a 1 year, 1 day chart. Key points. This was the April 2nd gap down, April 2nd Liberation Day gap down. And since that move lower, SPX has rallied up from right around 4,800 all the way up to over 5,900. So a huge rally. Here's the gap from the China news a couple of weekends ago. And then SPX came back down and tested this level right here, which was the high, that swing high before the April 2nd Liberation Day gap down. All right, so let's take a look now at a 30-day 1 hour chart. So we can take a look at the more recent price action. 30-day 1 hour chart. There's that gap up, weekend before last, China tariff news. And then it looked like on Friday, SPX was going to move down and headed down toward closing that gap, but found support right around, again, that previous high, and has rallied pretty sharply on Friday and definitely on Tuesday. More tariff news over the weekend, and now in more of a consolidation today. All right, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. Let's see. So we can get a closer look at the levels that are in play. All right, there we go. All right, so let's take a look at the levels in play for now. Let's start with the expected moves. The dashed purple lines are showing the lower and upper weekly expected move. And note SPX gapped up and traded above that level, up above that level on Tuesday, gapped up, traded above that level today, and is now back down below the upper weekly expected move. So that's based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. And then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. So SPX now trading just below the upper weekly expected move, but in the range of the daily expected move. And again, I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. All right, let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels on this chart. These are shown by the dark red lines. and they are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers, available on a variety of trading platforms. And again, this is Thinkorswim, a 30-day, 1-hour chart. Let's take a look at the key daily levels. So first of all, the volatility trigger is at 58.90. That's this VT level here. 58.90. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to delta exposure that tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to delta exposure, and that tends to subdue or decrease volatility. The next level up is the put wall at 59.25, and that's a strike with the largest net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support, and kind of an odd move higher in the put wall up to 5,900 above price. Again, kind of an unusual location for the put wall, and that was actually noted as resistance in the Spotgamma AM Founders Note. So that's a put wall. Then the next level up above is 6,000. And that is the call wall, the strike with the largest net positive gamma that could be expected to act as resistance. That also is the absolute gamma strike. And that is the strike with the largest absolute positive and negative gamma. And shifts in levels, again, the put wall shifted higher, and the volatility trigger also shifted higher. Give me just a moment. Let me check something. Okay. Good to go. All right, so those are the levels in play. Again, shifts in levels, volatility trigger, put wall shifted higher. And for SPY, the volatility trigger also shifted higher, put wall shifted lower, and the absolute gamma strike shifted higher. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. Here's SPX. Rally on Friday, gap down, then rally on Friday. And then huge rally on Tuesday based on more tariff news, and then more consolidation today. So a gap up, then a grind down, and finding support just above 5,900. All right, back to Bookmap now. So key support level, again, right around 5,900. And note, I do have SPX and SPY levels shown on this chart. And there is an offset, a difference in price between ES and SPX. And today it's right around 12 points. So ES minus SPX equal 5912. So I'm showing this SPX 5900 level at ES 5912. And I do post the index relationships that I use every day in Discord. And we'll talk more about this setups in just a few minutes. All right, so that's the S&P 500. And right around 5,900 key support today so far. All right, let's take a look at NDX now, NQ futures. NQ futures and Bookmap. Similar chart. About a 10-minute bullish opening drive, then a sharp reversal lower, And we'll again take a closer look at that setup in just a few minutes. And note that reversal lower happened right around the NDX 21,500 large gamma 2 level, and support just above the upper weekly expected move. So that should give you a sense of how strong the NASDAQ has been this week, specifically yesterday. All right, so let's take a look at the underlying index charts, and then we'll get back to NQ. So let's take a look at QQQ first. So QQQ, there are no spot gamma levels in play for today. Let's take a look at NDX. And you can see there's that 21,500 large gamma 2 level, around that level acting as resistance. And the 459 level is a combo level. All right, shifts in levels for NASDAQ. For NDX, the volatility trigger shifted higher, just like SPX and SPY. And then for QQQ, the volatility trigger also shifted higher, as well as the put wall in the absolute gamma strike. So that was a bullish hat trick for QQQ. And that is not unusual after such a sharp move higher yesterday. All right, so that's NASDAQ. Again, we'll talk about setups in just a few minutes. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis with a look at gamma, and then we'll get back to setups. All right, let's start with the founder's note, market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day. This is based on Spotgamma's older model. We'll take a look at it, quick look at it for reference. This is market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day for the S&P 500, NASDAQ, Russell 2000. Mixed picture here, some positive, some negative, so somewhat neutral overall. The interesting thing is the index components here shifted lower and the ETF components shifted higher. But again, kind of a mixed picture. All right, so let's take a look at the trace tool now. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers, and this will give us a more clear view of gamma based on the newer model. All right, so the red shading represents negative gamma, and you can see SPX is trading in a region of negative gamma. That's shown by the red shading and also the red GEX bars, gamma exposure bars, over on the left. And then note the positive gamma here, right at 5,900 and 5,905. And again, it looks like that has been providing some support for SPX today. And then note the much more substantial positive gamma shown down below at 5850. Let's zoom in on this just a little bit so we can get a little bit more range here in the chart. So again, choppy day. Excuse me, a consolidation day after such a big rally yesterday. And note also the low stability index. So in this environment, negative gamma, low stability index, we're looking for a lot of movement. All right, let's move on now. Let's take a look at some setups. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. And so my thesis for the day was really looking for higher volatility based on the negative gamma here as well as the low stability index. And then looking for consolidation today. That would only be natural after such a big move yesterday. All right, so let's move on now. Let's take a look at some setups. And I'm going to start with the S&P 500. And this is the hero chart, hedging impact real-time options provided to Spotgamma subscribers. And what this chart is showing is market maker options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. So again, this is Spotgamma Hero. hedging impact real-time options, provided 2 Spotgamma subscribers. There are 2 lines on this chart. The white line is price for SPX, and the purple line is the hero signal. And a rising hero signal indicates traders are taking positive delta options positions. They're buying calls and or selling puts in the SP 500 index components. That is SPX, SPY, XSP, and ES Futures. And then a falling hero signal indicates they're taking negative delta options positions. They are buying puts and or selling calls. And that's exactly what happened this morning after, again, this brief move up in the morning and then the sharp drop lower. So let's take a closer look at that. So you can see the move up for about 10 minutes. So traders were aggressively buying 0 TDE calls yesterday. It looked like they resumed for the first 10 minutes today, and then they quickly took the foot off the gas and then started taking negative delta positions. So let's take a look. So they were buying calls, that's shown by the rising orange line, took their foot off the gas pretty quickly, and then started selling calls, that's shown by the falling orange line, and buying puts. So a call peak reversal pattern, and then bearish momentum. All right, this is the S&P 500 equity signal. So it's the other signal, hero signal, that we can take a look at for the S&P 500. And note how noisy this is today. So there's kind of a role reversal. Typically, the S&P 500 index hero signal is more choppy, more noisy than the equity signal, and that is just the opposite today. But let's zoom in. Let's take a look at this setup. It did provide a little bit more of a leading indicator here. So this call peak, remember the call peak in the index signal was about like that. So more flat, and this is showing a clearly lower high. So traders started selling calls, buying puts, and again, price reversed lower. So that's the equity signal. And again, pretty noisy and choppy compared to the index signal here. And note, just recently there was another call peak right around 120, and then traders currently in the index components are buying puts and selling calls. And SPX did reverse lower. So let's go take a look at Bookmap now. Let's go back to the S&P 500. I'm going to zoom in on this, and then we'll take a look at this reversal lower in the morning, and then we'll take a look at the current price action. We'll go to about noon. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit more. All right, so let's take a look at the order flow on Bookmap now. So one clue in Bookmap is large traders were fading this move. That's shown with iceberg orders here in the subchart, shown by the falling blue line. So as price was moving up, traders were selling that. They were fading that move up with iceberg orders they used to hide their size. So that was the first clue of a potential reversal. Also, there were some limit sell orders in the order book. You can see limit sell orders just below 59.50. That is ES 59.50. Just around that range. and then more sell orders came in later. Note I did have a problem with my internet this morning, so there's about a 3-4 minute gap in the price action there. That was my internet problem. All right, so price jumped up, made a series of lower highs, and remember the reversal. Traders started selling calls and buying puts in both the S&P 500 index and equities. So all the index components as well as the S&P 500 stocks, and price dropped lower. And note on the way down, traders continued to sell with iceberg orders. Also sell stop orders fueled that move lower. That's shown by the yellow line. And then the dark blue line is showing cumulative volume delta falling. All right, so very nice short setup. After such a strong move yesterday. And again, finding support just above the 5,900 level. And you can see in the heat map here, some limit buy orders coming in just above 5,900, right around ES 59. Whoops. Zoom in on this just a little bit. So this looks like a little bit like the trend break and accumulation setup that Bruce has been talking about. That is one of the setups in his recent video in the Bookmap Learning Center. You can see the passive buyers on the way down. Passive buyers on the way down. Trend break, accumulation. Aggressive buyers start to come in. Cumulative volume delta rises. So that is a long setup. Again, trend break and accumulation, and that is one of the setups that is in the most recent supply and demand course in the Bookmap Learning Center that Bruce created a couple of weeks ago. Well worth taking a look at, and it is available to everyone. All right, I've got about 2 minutes to the FOMC minutes. Let's take a quick look at NASDAQ, then we'll pause for the FOMC minutes. So again, NASDAQ, remember the reversal at the 21,500 level. Here the order flow is pretty clear. Aggressive buyers on the way up, green volume dots. Buyers become exhausted. Aggressive sellers come in, shown by the magenta volume dots. And then cumulative volume delta, shown by the dark blue to magenta line, starts falling, as well as sell stop orders help to fuel that move lower. Let's take a quick look at Hero, then we'll get back. Go to NASDAQ. Peak pattern, call peak pattern. Price of first is lower, and traders are buying puts and selling calls. Again, price move lower. And then the call sellers and put buyers took the foot off gas. Price consolidating. And let's take a look at so this is the index signal for the NASDAQ, showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for NDX and QQQ. And the other signal that we can take a look at for the NASDAQ is the Mag 7 signal. And this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the stocks known as the Magnificent Seven. Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVDA, Tesla. These stocks make up a very large component of the NASDAQ. The leading here, call peak, So traders buying puts, selling calls, price reverses lower. All right, I've got 2 p.m. Let's go back to ES here, see if there's any reaction to the FOMC minutes. All right, so far it looks like there's no reaction. All right, let's take a quick look at some stocks, then we'll get back to live market. All right, so we've looked at ES, NQ. Let's take a look at some stocks. I want to start with Apple. Beautiful reversal here today. Reversal short, not a lot of range, but a very clear bearish reversal pattern. So let's take a look at Apple. Zoom in on this. All right, so first of all, the blue line is showing traders were buying puts from the open, and then price reversed down to the 200 hedge wall, found support at that level. And note price did move up quickly, briefly after the open, made a very nice call peak pattern. Flow alert comes in, signals significant options activity, and also a potential reversal in the hedging flow from positive delta to negative flow, negative delta, and that's exactly what happened. So traders buying puts from the open, briefly buying calls, flow alert, call peak pattern, and then bearish momentum on the downside, down to support at the 200 hedge wall. And then put buyers and call sellers take the foot off the gas, and Apple consolidates. Very clean, very clear reversal pattern. Reversal short just after the open, then support at the 200 hedge wall, and then consolidation after that. All right, so that's Apple. Let's take a look at ES. All right, so still no significant reaction. Let's take a look at Amazon. Similar pattern to Apple. Let's take a look at Hero and see what options traders are doing. Let's go to Hero, go to Amazon. Similar pattern. Traders buying puts from the open, briefly buying calls, flow alert, call peak pattern, price reverses lower. And almost identical to Apple. In the Hero pattern, as well as price action, it looks like there were some aggressive sellers starting to come in as Amazon moved up. So again, very brief bullish opening drive, bearish reversal, and then consolidation after that as the options traders took their foot off the gas. All right, next stock, Google. Note Google 175 is the call wall. And let's take a look at Hero, see what options traders are doing at Google. So in the case of Google, it was really more a matter of call buyers taking their foot off the gas. Looks like they came back in later on. But instead of a call peak and reversal, it was just a matter of the call buyers taking their foot off the gas. Hello, Hector. Welcome. Glad you're here. And note the key level there was the 175 call wall, and the call buyers took the foot off the gas as price moved up to that level, and price reversed lower at the call wall. So the call wall did its job, acted as resistance as expected. So it's mainly call buyers driving price at Google today. All right, next stock I want to take a look at is Meta. Zoom in on this. A little bit of a choppy pattern here today, but we'll see what traders are doing. Again, buying calls. In this case, they were selling puts initially. Flow alert comes in again. Price moves up to the 650 key gamma strike. Moves up a little bit higher, but finds resistance at that levels. And then traders start selling calls, buying puts, and Meta reverses lower from the 650 key gamma strike as traders shift from positive delta to negative delta. And now Meta really consolidating after finding resistance at the 650 level. So let's go to Bookmap. So Meta, there's that 650 key gamma strike. Note the liquidity at that level. That's shown by the heat map in Bookmap, which shows a history of limit orders in the order book. And those orders were in the order book, limit sell orders, before the cash open. And they were consumed. Aggressive sellers start to come in, and price drops lower as traders start buying puts and selling calls. Now price consolidating. All right, so that's Meta. And then let's take a look at NVDA. Note all the magenta volume dots. There are a lot of aggressive sellers in NVIDIA today, just selling stock outright. Let's see what options traders have been doing. And this is, when I checked earlier today, a pretty choppy, noisy signal. But net for the day, traders are buying calls and selling puts. That's shown by the positive notional value for calls. They're buying calls and they're selling puts. So that's net for the day, how traders are positioning themselves for the NVIDIA earnings after the market closes. And note with all the magenta volume dots and the falling cumulative volume delta, price rising, to me that's a pretty good indication that the options traders are driving price. All right, any questions, comments? Anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? All right, let's get back to the indexes. Go back to the S&P 500. Let's go back to Hero. I'm going to shift to the total signal. Let's go back to the S&P 500 index signal. And now that has become a little bit more noisy. And I'm going to open up another Hero tab here so I don't have to zoom. Let's go to the equity signal. Open up full screen. All right, so the equity signal started moving up, most recently right around 1255. Consolidated a little bit, now moving higher. So the equity signal is moving higher. Back to the index signal here. And really kind of flat. All right, so back to Bookmap now. So net for the day, light blue line shows large traders net for the day. Since I opened Bookmap right around 6:45, I think, something like that, 6:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Iceberg net sellers, also stop orders, net negative for the day. Price rising though, as Hero, the S&P 500 equity signal has been rising. And finding support right around the SPY combo 2 level. Heading back up to VWAP. That's shown by the light blue line here. Rising cumulative volume delta. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. Also moving higher. All right, so let's run through these Mag 7 components again. We'll start with Apple. Not doing much. Amazon, not doing much. Slightly rising. Google, not much. Meta, not much. Whoops. Microsoft, moving lower. NVDA. So NVIDIA is starting to move higher. Let's check Tesla. So NVIDIA and Tesla are moving higher, and the rest of the Mag 7 components not doing much. Back to NASDAQ, that may be enough to drive NASDAQ higher and the S&P 500 higher. All right, so again, ES up to VWAP. Let's go back, check Hero. Does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? Any questions? Anything you want me to take a look at? Let's go back to Hero. All right, so the index signal rising, as well as the equity signal. So as long as these Hero signals move higher, I expect ES to move higher. Now, normally when I'm trading, I'm looking at 3 screens. I'm looking at Bookmap on my middle screen, just like this. Then I'm looking at Hero on a left screen, and then my trading platform on a right screen. Of course, I'm only presenting on one screen, so I can only show one screen at a time. So it does make things a little bit awkward. All right, let's zoom out. Let's get a big picture again. So ES still trying to recover from the sharp drop just after the open, right around 940. Maybe finding resistance at VWAP. Some aggressive sellers starting to come in. And let's take a look and see. All right, so now the Hero signal for the index, S&P 500 index signal, making just a little tick lower there. Equity signal continues to move higher. Let's check trace. All right, so trace is showing nothing but positive gamma up, negative gamma up above. And again, that put wall at 59.25. Back to Hero. All right, so index signal making a little bit of a move lower. Equity signal now flattening out. And ES finding a resistance at VWAP. And just above the upper weekly expected move. That's the upper weekly expected move for ES. Let's check NASDAQ. All right, so NASDAQ found a little bit of resistance at NQ 21,500. I'm going to turn on market pulse price change. That's this oscillating indicator. And the way I use this is in an uptrend, I like to look at the red extremes or close to it to confirm entry points for long. So here's a trend break. Deeper pullbacks line up with the bright red extremes. On the market pulse price change, this just helps to confirm the deeper pullbacks and good for long entries. All right, so that's NASDAQ. Let's take a look at ES. I can turn on the market pulse price change as well. And again, use the, let's take a look. So trend break and a reversal from bearish to bullish, uptrend, market pulse price change extremes are close to it, sending up long entries. That started right around 145. Let's go take a look at Hero. So that most recent move higher began right around 145. That is the equity signal. Continues to move higher. Let's take a look at the index signal. That really didn't start moving higher until about 2. And now is, now moving pretty sharply lower. So I think that brief move up maybe has come to an end. Finding a resistance at VWAP. So to me, that looks like well, you could draw a trend line a couple of different ways. That would be the deeper pullbacks. Another thing I like to use for this, with this market pulse price change, is looking for divergences. So notice right here, and this is typically pretty short term, price making high and market pulse price change. So price making new highs, and then the market pulse price change moving in the opposite direction, so setting up a nice divergence with a short at VWAP, a level that you expect might act as resistance. All right, so now the market pulse price change is moving up, or was briefly moving up. And ES found resistance at the SPY 590 large gamma 2 level right there. So that was resistance before. Did act as support. Now resistance again. And Elite Traders Pro, welcome. Glad you're here. Hello. Let's check and see what options traders are doing again. Back to Hero. Index signal continues to move lower. And the equity signal was lagging a little bit, but now turning higher again. Let's go back, check the index signal. Back to Bookmap. This purple line right here is point of control. So that's a level with the most traded volume. And that is for the session. And my session began, so I load, I open up Bookmap between 6:30, 6:45 a.m. Eastern Time, and then I load backfill data that's available with Bookmap data back until 6 p.m., the open 6 p.m. yesterday. So that is my session. All right, so ES testing that SPY 590 large gamma 2 level again. Which is just above the point of control. Again, support, resistance, support, then resistance. And there's some sellers in at 24.75. Just above that level. Those are limit sell orders in the order book. And the market pulse price change has been moving higher as prices consolidating there. Let's check Hero. First, the index signal. Flat, maybe ticking up a little bit. Check the equity signal. Also flat. And Elite Traders Pro says I am long in NASDAQ 100, S&P 500, and Dow Jones. Hope that works out for you. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so now S&P 500 ES is broken up above that 59 SPY 590 level. And the market pulse price change was doing a good job of indicating that move higher. So price keeps moving up. The next test will be the VWAP, which is currently right around 59.25, 59.28, just above that. Let's see what options traders are doing. Back to Hero. Equity signal flat. Index signal also flat. Now the market pulse price change starting to make lower highs. Let's do a quick check of NASDAQ. All right, NASDAQ found resistance at 21,500. So it looks like that uptrend line acted as resistance right around 488. Market pulse price change extreme. All right, back to ES. Let me turn on the stops and icebergs on chart indicator. I think that was updated this morning. It'll take a couple of minutes to load. Or probably less. What I'm looking at here is this drop in the light blue line. Yeah, this has changed, so I need to update the settings. So let me turn that off. I'll do that later. Turn this off. All right, that is ES. Let's take a look at NASDAQ. So both just kind of chopping around now. Take a quick step back, look at the overall picture, then we'll wrap it up for the day. Let's turn this off. All right, so big picture for NASDAQ. Reversal lower right around NDX 21,500, large gamma 2 level. Down to the upper weekly expected move, then a slow grind higher. All right, ES. Turn this off. Big picture view. Reversal lower about 10 minutes after the cash open as traders are selling calls and buying puts. Support right around 5,900. Positive gamma. All right, everyone. My time is up. I want to thank you very much for watching. Remember, data coming out tomorrow and Friday, and probably the most important data is the PCE data, 8:30 a.m. on Friday. And then I will see you next Monday. All right, everyone, thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. And I will see you on Monday. Have a great day. Bye.